Good evening, my dear friends. I welcome you all to the Hindu and the Businessline editorial analysis on 25th June 2022. The South American country, the Latin America, is turning pink with the election of Gustavo Petro in Colombia in the last Sunday runoff elections. There are other selections to the top post in South America as well. Gabriel Boric in Chile was elected 6 months back as the leftist leader in Chile, the youngest leader to occupy the presidential office in Chile. Pedro Castillo in Peru, Andre Lopez in Mexico, and Alberto Fernandez in Argentina. The growing anti-incumbent sentiments in Latin America can be seen from the perspective of the handling of the COVID in the last 2 years, where the Latin America saw many deaths. In Brazil alone, 7 lakhs people died. The growing inequalities for a long time has gripped Latin America to come out of the right centrist forces and opt for the leftist forces. The anti-incumbent voting, which is going on continuing in the present decade of the 21st century, is a very interesting thing. The Latin American countries have formed a non-alignment movement with the rest of the Americas. That is, the removal of inequality has prompted them to form the Union of South American Nations, the Community of South American and Caribbean States, and the Pacific Alliance. These alliances have reached out to India and China, and they have held dialogues with India and China. The rising narcotics business in Honduras and the Chile and the Colombia have prompted the voters to turn towards the leftist forces. This is an experiment in the making. The newly elected President Gustavo Petro has vowed to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels. Colombia is the greatest exporter of petroleum and petroleum products. The growing inequality, the growing poverty has all prompted the South American nations, the Latin American nations to come together and throw the long-serving, the centric forces. The non-alignment is the vibrant fabric which connects. The non-alignment is the fabric which connects the South American nations, and they have shed their former alliances with the centric forces. The write-up predicts Lula da Silva is going to make it to the front with the next elections. The Brazil has lost its confidence on Bolsonaro, who could not handle the COVID crisis. Similar is the case with many South American countries. The Colombia is the third largest South American country in terms of population. Gustavo Petro is higher on the environmental concerns. He was a former mayor of Bogota, the capital of Colombia. He was a former guerrilla, a member of the M19 group, which, along with the other guerrilla groups, wreaked havoc. And Colombia has the history of having warfare with guerrillas for almost a very long time, spanning 1960 to 2021. The growing concerns of the inequality and the gender bias prompted Gabriel Boric to appoint more women in his cabinet than men in the Chilean Assembly. And Xiomara Castillo, who is the new president of Honduras, has done away with the drug mafia, and these concerns are the most nagging concerns for over 20 years, last 2 decades in South American history. So, the non alignment movement of the South American nations is reaching out for the freedom from inequality and the Cold War kind of situations in the total Americas of North America and South America combined together. The 14th BRICS summit has ended on a different note. The BRICS is an alliance of 5 nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. All these 5 nations are on different strategies with regard to the concerns in their regions. For example, India is locked on the western side by Pakistan and on the eastern side by Myanmar from foraying alliance into the Central Asia and the Southeast Asia. India and China are on different footings in the terrorism identification. Recently, China has denied the United Nations Security Council's attempts to term Makki as the terrorist, the wanted terrorist. India opposed it. Russia and China are favoring the voices against the NATO, while India, Brazil, and South Africa, the other nations in the BRICS summit, favor the opposition against the NATO. The Indo-Pacific has an alliance called Quad with Japan, United States of America, Australia, and India as its members, countering China. How China is taking on this issue in the BRICS? The BRICS summit is a coming together of divergent views of different countries, of 5 countries on different platforms coming together. But however, there is a common thread among them. The new development bank is the common thread. On the concerns of new development bank, which will finance the developmental projects in all these 5 countries, will have a common grouping and the common interests. The new development bank is the thread which joins this BRICS in the truest meaning of brick. The brick means a very much closely held form of construction material which we use for building. Therefore, the new development bank, which is for developmental purposes, holds the BRICS countries together. The otherwise divergent views of these countries are melted away by the new development bank concept. In the BRICS summit, Russia and China favored the war in Ukraine while the other countries objected to it. There are other issues which are of common interest to all these 5 countries, that is climate change. Then the space, the joint work on the space and installation or the installation of remote sensing satellites. In these 3 areas, the 5 countries have agreed to cooperate together and work together. So, despite the differences in the voices among all these 5 countries, the common thread of new development bank, the cooperation on space, the cooperation on climate change, and the cooperation on installation of remote sensing satellites is a very interesting phenomenon. The Ministry of Rural Development has introduced the National Mobile Monitoring Software. That is an app which will be installed in the smartphones of the NREGA workers. The National Rural Employment Guarantee Act ensures minimum work for women. However, with the introduction of National Mobile Monitoring Software, this has become a perilous issue. The national mobile monitoring software policy of the Ministry of Rural Development requires the NREGA mates. There will be an NREGA mate, a controlling authority who will oversee the attendance of workers in the sites. The NRGA used to offer some flexibility to women because other than the work at the sites, they used to have the family family responsibilities and the care for the family which they used to do, and they could go for other works also. However, with the introduction of the national mobile monitoring app, this has stopped because the national mobile monitoring app records the attendance of the workers that in the daytime as well as in the afternoon. So no other activity or no other business can be taken up in between the daytime and the afternoon. There are so many women who engage in the care for their families and the family responsibilities other than working in the sites. Some women finish work earlier, that is by 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning, and then go back to some other work or some other activities. The minimum rural employment scheme suggested by the NREGA is just an enhancer of their life rather than becoming an absolute on them. So, with the introduction of National Mobile Monitoring app, this has stopped the other businesses, that is, the other occupations for which the woman could have engaged, has stopped. And there are some software issues also. In Kerala, especially, it is very difficult to upload the attendance. In there are software issues, there are errors which are not addressed. The very accidental or the very unprecedented introduction of this national mobile monitoring app in May 2022 has raised so many concerns. These type of issues have to be addressed. The editorial in the Businessline, that is greening of power, is discussing a new move by the ministry, the union ministry, in waiving the requirement of 1 megawatt of power, minimum 1 megawatt of power by the power consuming stations, the power consuming enterprises from 100 kilowatts is a very phenomenal move. The lock-in period of 1 year is also ensured. Friends, I will explain. The consumers, that is the consumers of renewable energy, those for which an ESG concern, that is environmental and sustainability concerns, are being objectified for India's move to the greener energy by 2030. India wishes to move to the greener energy by 2030. That is, it wants most of the greener energies, renewable energy sectors, that is wind and solar power, to be tapped. In its motive, there were several hurdles. That is, when encouraging the consumers to use greener energy, the requirement of minimum contract of 1 megawatt was a greater hurdle. Now, with the relaxing of this norm to just 100 kilowatts of power, the industries will now be able to sign up with distribution companies, the discoms, who are involved in distributing the power, whether it is green power or other sources of thermal power. So, the distribution companies can have a minimum guarantee that 1 year lock-in period, that is for 1 year, these industries cannot go away for other sources of power. This 1 year lock in period will help them in ensuring a steady supply of power. There are three players in the power sector. There are generating companies, those who are generating power, the distribution companies, those who are distributing the power generated by the generating companies, and the consumers. Sometimes what happens is that there are some captive power plants. The captive power plants for which the manufacturing industry itself sets up the captive power plants. In this renewable energy sector also, the requirement of even 100 kilowatt hours of minimum take of power, renewable power, is relaxed for the captive generating plants. The captive generating plants are those plants, those industries which produce the power captively for their use. The article says this is very much discriminating. That is, the creating a difference between the captive generating plants and the standalone consumers is very much discriminating. The standalone consumers will have to minimum consume 100 kilowatts of hours of power. And why not this be extended to even captive power plants, those industries who are captively producing the renewable energy? The article stresses that such kind of discriminating stance should be waived off. The captive power plants have also been the wheeling charges and the subsidy related charges. So, this is also a disadvantage for the standalone consumers who has to pay the wheeling charges and the subsidy related charges. So, just overcoming the difficulties of this renewable energy sector to make India more greener power, these kinds of disadvantages or differences in policy has to be stopped. That is, waiving the captive plants of minimum requirement of 100 kilowatt hours, the lock-in requirement of 1 year, the wheeling charges and subsidy charges must also be applicable to captive power plants. The India's wind energy, that is renewable energy sector, needs a course correction. India has the maximum capacity of wind energy to meet the renewable energy target of 140 gigawatts in by 2030. Wind energy is a very effective source of renewable energy because India has conditions conducive to it. However, some factors are nagging this sector. The distribution companies are creating tariff barriers, and there is another problem of collecting huge dues from the distribution companies. Added to it is the problem of land acquisition and reverse bidding. Reverse bidding is the process of bidding by the sellers on non negotiable bids being raised by them, and it could be from anywhere from India. The wind energy is a very big source of industry in the areas where the traditional wind generation companies are located. So, with the coming of the reverse bidding, the locations, the geo locations of the wind energy manufacturers have scattered, that is skewed. This is a greater concern. The wind energy requires the land acquisitions. There are stumble blocks in land acquisitions across India. The reverse bidding has stopped all process of development into the wind energy sector. The wind generating companies have reduced from 30 in the past to 12 now. These are the some of the issues which India needs to correct so that for its motive or objective of making India a renewable energy hub by 2030. There is lacuna in making explicit the subsidies given to the wind energy sector. There is difference between the tariffs of the wind energy and the solar energy. However, the government looks at these two sectors as one. The India has a more potential for developing wind energy when compared to other sources of renewable energy. Therefore, the course correction needs to be made. The Viacom or the booth has gained the broadcasting rights of the IPL for the next 5 years for a 23,491 crore rupees. The Hotstar has exited this space. The Hotstar was a key player in the IPL broadcasting. There were sponsors, there were ads, and the daily revenue from ads came up to 43 crores. However, the new entrant, Viacom, that is Booth, will have lots of stumbling blocks in this front. First, the revenue generation is only possible when the number of ads increase, and the ad revenue is the major revenue for telecasting the IPL. The new player will have lots of difficulties because the subscriber base is limited. The subscriber base of Hotstar was in millions. Mind you, this IPL will be telecast only in the OTT platform. OTT platform means the platform in the internet where this, with the help of an app, where this telecast will be made. The article has estimated the revenues. The estimated revenues for the next 5 years. The average revenue comes to around 4,000 crores. So, in total, if we total it, it comes to around 20,000 crores in next 5 years. So, the viability of the telecasting rights price which the Viacom has paid, that is 23,000 crores, has to be seen, because now we don't have a Kohli or MS Dhoni or Sachin Tendulkar for the sponsorship ads. So the ad companies are also finding it difficult to sponsor the telecast of the IPL. And added to that is the generation of new subscribers. The IPL is in a weaning phase, and many people do not want to watch the IPL. And this weaning phase has to be factored into while bidding for the telecast rights. However,